Hey guys and gals, it's your buddy Drew with Living History's Mysteries and Three-Eyed Raven Productions. You know, during this little journey for Irish American Heritage Month that we've been taking into the folklore and the myths and legends and the history that comes out of Ireland, I got to thinking the one thing we haven't covered was probably one of the biggest pieces of myth, legend, and folklore that ever came from the Emerald Isle. I'm talking about the fairies, those little sprites, the Fae Folk, that so many things were based off of in the old religions and the beliefs of those people from the island. So I started looking to try to find the information that would explain the legend of the Fae Folk and where they came from and what happened to those legends. Do they still exist today? I know I grew up, with my great-grandmother being Irish, and I was always hearing stories about fairy rings, rings of clover on the ground, or fairy hills. And always respecting the forest when I went into it, because the Fae were always watching, and they knew who they could respect and who they couldn't. So I figured, why not? I'll tell you guys now, you need to check this out, because it's going to be good.
To begin with, I want to focus on a topic that anyone familiar with Irish mythology will know well, the Tuatha Dé Danann. The Tuatha Dé Danann, meaning people of the goddess Danu, is common in Irish and Celtic mythology. Danu was the mother goddess of the Tuatha Dé Danann. The Tuatha Dé Danann were a supernatural race that dwelt in the other world, but they could interact with humans and the human world. The first king of the Tuatha Dé Danann was Nuada, who lost his hand or arm in battle, and thus lost his right to govern and to kingship. He was later provided with a silver, almost bionic arm to replace this, and then years later he was provided with a fully functioning hand or arm. There is a story of jealousy in this tale. Nuada was initially fixed with his silver hand or arm by the physician of the Tuatha Dé Danann. Years later, the son of the physician managed to find a way through using magic and other such things to provide Nuada with a fully functioning human hand or arm. Different accounts say arm or hand. When the physician found out this though, he murdered his son in an act of jealousy. This is just one small caveat detail of the tales of the Tuatha Dé Danann. The enemies of the Tuatha Dé Danann were the Fomorians, often depicted as being monstrous, destructive, and a chaotic force that dwelt under the earth or under the sea. The Tuatha Dé Danann would go on to defeat the Fomorians in battle. In later folklore, the Tuatha Dé Danann are often described as fairies. From my understanding in general, the Tuatha Dé Danann are considered the fifth tribe or people of Ireland, and then they were replaced by the Milesians. When the Milesians or the Milesians replaced the Tuatha Dé Danann, the Tuatha Dé Danann were forced to retreat to places like this, forests and other isolated parts of the human realm. One of the main gods of the Tuatha Dé Danann is the Dagda, meaning good god, who's often portrayed as a father figure, a king and a druid. The Dagda is often associated with agriculture, fertility, strength and magic, and he was known to have a magic staff or club, with one end given the power of death and the other the power of life. So he could kill a man or a being with one end and heal them with the other. The Dagda is considered by some to be a modern version of an ancient Celtic and Gallo-Roman god called Cicalus, who was often depicted in carrying a mallet in one hand and a olla or jar for cooking in the other. The Morrigan is another important Celtic deity, often referred to as the Great or Phantom Queen, or sometimes as the Queen of the Demons. Associated with war and fate, the Morrigan is often depicted as being a crow, and is often referred to as being a trio of sisters. On the night of the Gaelic festival of Samhain, a festival that is a precursor to Halloween in many respects, a fire festival that marked the end of summer and the beginning of the dark part of the year. The Dagda and the Morrigan would come together, and that would signify the health and prosperity of the tribe and the fertility of the crops and animals in the year to come. Another important Celtic deity was Lugh, often depicted as being a warrior king, a master craftsman and a saviour. One of Lugh's sons was Cuchulainn, a warrior hero and demigod in Irish mythology. Lugh is thought to be a modern interpretation of the ancient Lugos, who is often depicted as having 3 heads. There is many references to this god today, including the city of Lyon in France, which is apparently named after Lugh. Brigid is another important Celtic deity. She is associated with poetry, blacksmithing, healing, and various other things. Brigid is the daughter of the Dagda, and she is often referred to as being 3 separate entities. The phenomenon of describing Celtic deities in 3 parts, almost like a trinity, is a fascinating feature of Celtic mythology. Cunliffe argues that it was essentially a way to add potency and value to what they were saying, or importance to what they were saying and what they stood for. But I'm going to delve a wee bit more into other theories as to why these people, or gods or deities, are often described as having 3 forms. If you have any input on that, please let me know in the comments below. The religion of the ancient Celts is often described as being Celtic Polytheism, meaning they worship numerous gods. In fact, there is reference to over 300 Celtic deities, although they may be names for the same deity. 3 important and often cited ancient Celtic gods was Taranis, meaning god of thunder, as the word Taranis probably comes from the Celtic Taran, although I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly. Another important god was Titatis, meaning god of the tribe. And the third was Esos. Ogmios was another important Celtic god in ancient times, known as the god of eloquence, and there are tales of men having their ears nailed to his tongue, given his powers of eloquence and persuasion. In Julius Caesar's conquest of Gaul, he writes that the Gauls were extremely superstitious and that they sometimes performed human sacrifices. The sacrifices were performed by the Druids. Julius Caesar also writes that the Gauls believed that they were descendants of Dispater, the Roman god of the underworld, and that the Gauls also revered gods such as Apollo, Mars, Jupiter, and Minerva. It's hard to say how accurate Julius Caesar's interpretation of the Gauls was, but there may be some credence to some of it. It does seem that he oversimplified a lot of it, though, for a Roman audience, as Julius Caesar's conquests or commentaries on Gaul was meant to be propaganda for a Roman audience. Julius Caesar's interpretation of the Gaulish Apollo was probably Maponus, a Celtic god similar to Apollo. Why are fairies constantly referenced in Scotland and Ireland? From the fairy pools on the Isle of Skye to fairy trees in Ireland. It is remarkable how many things are named after fairies, and for good reason, as fairies play a significant role in the mythology and folklore of these countries. Now, as soon as I start talking about fairies, you'd be forgiven for thinking that I've lost my mind, or away with the fairies, as we say in Scotland. But don't worry, I'm no more crazy than I was last week. On its surface, fairies may sound like a silly subject, but there is a whole lot more to this subject than mere stupidity. Now, today I've come to Aberfoyle, a reputed home of the fairies. In Scotland, you can randomly come across stories of fairies even when you're not looking for them. A few weeks ago, when I went to visit the capital of Dalriada, Dunad, I randomly came across yet another story about fairies. A stone-carved ball was found there from thousands of years ago. According to local legend, stone balls and other artefacts imbued with magical powers were abandoned by fairies at the bottom of the hill fort. Tons of glens, bridges and walks are named after fairies in Scotland. The Fairy Glen in Rosemarkie is one, for instance, known for its well-dressing ceremonies, where local children would decorate springs with flowers in the hope that the fairies would keep the water clean. Another is the Fairy Bridge on the Isle of Skye, where local legend states that the chief of the Old Clan MacLeod married a fairy princess before she had to return to fairyland. In Ireland, there is an old tradition of fairy trees. I'll put a link to a video in the description below. Essentially, some farmers won't clear certain trees or bushes, even though it would be more profitable to do so, as they believe they belong to the fairies or the other world. Others tell tales of fairies putting the stray on people, essentially leading them astray and putting them under some sort of spell. Yet what's some of the mythology behind this? The East Sidhe is an Irish name for a supernatural race in Celtic mythology. They are thought to be the descendants of fallen angels, or the Tuatha Danann, meaning the folk of the goddess Danu. The Tuatha Danann play an important role in Irish mythology. They are said to exist in the Celtic otherworld, a realm where deities and possibly the dead reside. It is said that some can reach the other world by entering ancient burial mounds or caves, or by going underwater or across the Western Sea. The East Sidhe are said to live in underground fairy forts in an invisible parallel universe that coexists with the human realm, and that these entities can influence the human realm. Fairy forts themselves are said to be the remains of stone circles, ring forts, hill forts, or other circular prehistoric dwellings, which have been imbued with magic by druids. What else is said about fairies in general? Some say that they don't like being called fairies, and apparently green is their colour. As opposed to being either angelic or devilish, fairies seem to be both depending on the context, and they often are said to use trickery. I'm sure after this video, you'll notice just how many things in Scotland and Ireland are named after fairies, and some of the reasons for this. Please let me know your thoughts below.
Welcome back. You know, it's like I said in the beginning. I grew up with a lot of these stories, but my great-grandmother was already in her 80s when I was born. When she finally passed away, she was 95 years old, and I was 12. So I heard a lot of those old stories, a lot of those old tales, a lot of those old folk tales from her. And I figured, since we are looking into Irish American Heritage this month, I might as well share a little bit of that fairy magic with you guys as well. You know, I really expected Harry to be here, but, you know, what are you supposed to do? But anyway, guys, that's all I got for you today. You know, I hope you enjoyed this look into the Fae Folk and the myths and legends and folklore of the Emerald Isle. Until next time, Take care of yourselves. Take care of each other. God bless you. God love you. We do. And we'll catch you out there. Wait, what is this? Harry! Oh my God, you're such a arse. Oh, change me back. Harry, come here. Harry, Harry, come here. Ooh, I'm gonna stick a fly trap from the ceiling. I'm gonna stick one of them fly strips.